Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for attending the RUSI AGM. It's our 189th AGM, but it's the first time it's ever taken place in a virtual form. The first item on the agenda is an address from me, from the chair. So I will begin with that, and everyone joining us is very well aware that this is a time of great uncertainty and crisis in the world. And of course, these events in recent months have changed the way that RUSI works. It's been a particular challenge because the COVID crisis began just as our management and staff had moved offices in central London. And it's a great tribute to them that things have happened so seamlessly, with such high productivity throughout, launching quite a number of new initiatives over recent months, and that RUSI has been very active during the COVID crisis so far. And so far, we're coming very well through that crisis from the point of view of our finances and activity, although we're not complacent about that. Recent events do underline the relevance of this institute for the future. Expertise in security and defense, in the implications of new global developments for the corporate world and government world, that expertise is likely to be very highly sought after in the next decade. And so I believe there's a very big role for RUSI in the next few years, provided we remain good at fulfilling that role. And that's certainly what we've done in the last 5 years. I am standing down today as your chair after 5 years in this office. I have insisted for 5 years on the rotation of office and the observance of term limits. And I apply that to myself, having started out on a 5-year term. But it just gives me an opportunity just for a minute or two to review what we've been doing for the last 5 years for the benefit of the members who've come to the AGM. Working with the Director General, Karen von Hippel, we've been able to build on very firm foundations due to the wise decision of our predecessors to buy the freehold of 61 Whitehall early in 2015. And that's helped to give us financial foundations to do many other things. We've now got an immensely valuable asset. We're about halfway through raising the money for a major refurbishment of the building. So we have what we will need for the future, a building that will still be rich in history, but will also accommodate our staff where they were intended to be accommodated originally, and will be humming with events, with modern facilities. So we hope that that refurbishment can begin very soon. Your trustees are working hard on that at the moment. We do need to raise another £5 million or so. We're confident we can do that. But if anybody at the AGM comes into a fortune in the next few weeks and months, we'd love to hear from you about what we could do with that. And we've had the fantastic support of Sir Mick Davies, the chair of our campaign board, in raising millions of pounds so far for this purpose, with excellent management leadership of this project as well. Most important of all, in the last 5 years, we have maintained and expanded our output of high quality, independent research with a strong reputation in governments, in media, and all around the world. And I want to say an immense thank you as the outgoing chair to such a strong management team, to Karen, who has done a superb job in recent years as Director General, to Deputy Malcolm Chalmers, to Jonathan Isle, to Deborah Karimi. That management team, the senior management team, works together in an outstanding way. It's a great combination of people. And of course, they are supported by really expert researchers and thinkers and commentators throughout the Institute, making steadily more impact over recent years. It's a very powerful combination, and it's reflected in our statistics. 5 years ago, our income was £5.5 million in a year. Now it is £13 million. We had 5 years ago no financial reserves. Now our reserves are £3.3 million, our cash reserves, enough to cover 5.5 months of expenditure. And we've gone up from 48 staff to 86 staff. So it's a big expansion, but it's not a flash in the pan. Although we've expanded greatly, we've taken great care to do so with deep and broad foundations. Today, we have 140 research projects with wide diversity of funding sources from corporations, governments, multilateral organizations, foundations, and individuals. So we're not overly dependent on any one source of income or work. And we have at least 30 multi-year projects, which gives us much greater resilience in our finances and predictability in our income looking ahead. Finally, a word about governance. We've done a lot on that in the last 5 years, revamped it considerably. We've clarified the roles of the advisory board and the trustees. We've amended our royal charter appropriately. We're very fortunate to have a varied and talented and formidable group of trustees who help out in so many ways and give freely of their time. We have some excellent additions to propose for permanent election to the trustees later in the meeting. I'll say a word about them later. But I want to thank the trustees for their patience, their dedication, their support for my work over the last 5 years. I just want to single out for thanks because he's also standing down today. Sir Roger Bone, the chairman of our nominations committee. He's been a model trustee, 9 years of strong support for RUSI, giving rigorous attention to everything a trustee has to attend to. And also a special thanks to my vice chair, my deputy, Sir John Scarlett, vice chair for the last 4 years. I could not have asked for more from any deputy, always available with wisdom and experience. It has been a complete pleasure to work with such fantastic trustees and outstanding management. And I will be delighted to maintain a strong association with RUSI in the future as the senior vice president that you've invited me to be, alongside 2 other senior vice presidents, the Duke of Wellington and General Petraeus, which is pretty good company to keep in my view. And finally, I'm so pleased that I can be succeeded by Sir David Lidington, subject to the passing of the resolution later in the meeting. One of the people I most respect out of all the people I've ever met in all my time in government. And just as I've been able to build on the work of predecessors in the last 5 years, he has all the talents and abilities needed to build on what we've been doing in recent years, with tremendous prospects for the future for this institute. So that is, I'm sorry that's taken a little longer than would be normal, but it's the culmination of 5 years involvement for me. And there will be an opportunity for Q&A a bit later. We're now going to go on to the Director General update. So it's over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome everyone to RUSI's 189th AGM. I'd like to start my report by saying that it really remains an enormous privilege for me to lead this exceptional institution. As Lord Hague said, we have outstanding staff at all levels, and of course, an incredible number of people in our governing bodies. And I've really, this feeling has only been reinforced as I've watched how resilient my colleagues have been as they have rapidly adjusted to the lockdown and shifting most of our activities online. So it's a real privilege for me. Today, I want to report on what we have been doing since the last AGM, including during the lockdown. And I will start with research and then discuss some outreach and activities. Now, all the details, if you want more, are in that financial report, our annual report that we had shared earlier. So let me just highlight a few things. On research, as Lord Hague mentioned, we have a very strong program of research. We have over £10 million in gross income, but we've also been reviewing since lockdown the research pipeline to make sure that the year ahead is secure. And I can confirm that our pipeline is strong. You will get more details, of course, when you hear Deborah's report next. But that being said, we are very aware that we may be entering into an economic downturn, and that could last for some time. And so that will potentially impact our business model. And so we are already working very hard to maintain this very diverse research portfolio and to ensure high quality research, including on some of the issues that we're facing today, as Lauren Haig mentioned. So I'm just going to highlight one point from each of our research teams. They all do so many more things than this, but just to share one point per team. Under the leadership of Tom Keating, who runs our Center for Financial Crime and Security Studies, they have launched a sanctions task force, which is a high-level working group that is providing advice to governments, private sector, and others on the UK's sanctions strategy post-Brexit. Our cyber team, run by James Sullivan, has been a leading voice in the national debate on Huawei and their presence in the UK's 5G infrastructure. I'm sure you've heard them on the news many times. Professor Trevor Taylor, he runs our Defense Industries and Society program, and he recently released a report that argues for the need for a speedier defense procurement process that recognizes the overall context for defense innovation to thrive. Dr. Neil Melvin runs our International Security Studies program, and among their varied activities, they have been running a bilateral UK-Russia security dialogue with the Russian International Affairs Council. Important to keep that dialogue going even during tough times. Professor Peter Roberts directs our Military Sciences Group, and their Modern Deterrence Project has identified ways to enlist civilians in national security and resilience, and they've recommended ways to improve national resilience during these shocks. And so it's very critical work during this pandemic, including a lot of output from that team. Keith Ditcham is our acting director of the Organized Crime and Policing Program. They recently won a 4-year extension for an EU-funded project on maritime security, so we're keeping our work going with the European Union. Tom Plant leads our Proliferation and Nuclear Policy Group, and one unique effort that they have is called Project Sandstone, and for that they use open source intelligence techniques to monitor and report on North Korean proliferation networks. And this work has actually been informing the UN Security Council sanctions enforcement, as well as been covered in the press. Emily Winterbotham leads our Terrorism and Conflict Program, and this team has significantly advanced the knowledge base as to what works and what doesn't work in terms of preventing and countering violent extremism programs. They've reviewed over 1,000 programs globally, and this is very important because it's all government, mostly government money. In addition, we have 2 overseas offices. As I mentioned last year, we have RUSI Europe, which is a legal entity in Brussels, and it is run by Dr. Peter Burson, and a second office in Nairobi run by Lunia Masuku, and they're incredibly busy with a number of programs. Just on the tail end of the research is our Leadership Center, which is a training center that we train civil servants and from around the world, and that is run by Dr. Jonathan Isle. And we have put some of that on hold for now, but we are preparing to deliver more of the teaching online. Now, in terms of outreach and activities, Sabrina Downey, who many of you have met if you joined one of our many webinars, she runs our events program, and over the last year, we've had over 200 events, 65 since we have been in lockdown, so 65 virtual and the rest physical. We've had over 5,000 people attending these events, and many more have been able to attend. Of course, when we do these online, then can physically fit into 61 Whitehall. We were also a key partner in the major NATO Engages event last December, and there were a number of world leaders in attendance, and that was a fantastic experience for us. In terms of publications, Dr. Emma DeAngelis leads that team, and they are responsible for outputs in many formats, from really highly specialist research papers to short blog pieces. And this range really reflects, I think, both our expanding research program, but also the appeal that RUSI has as a forum for debate. Our communications team is led by Saka Muin, and they have seen a steady increase over the years in attention to our work by most measures that we follow, and that's media mentions, website visits, and social media followers. We've also produced a range of multimedia content, and that includes live coverage and streaming of events, short videos, and now we have 2 or 3 podcast series that various research teams are running. membership is directed by Francois Landers. And I think you may recall last year I said we were going to hire a membership director so we could really up our membership activity. We want to do more for all of you, as well as increase the numbers of members that we have, individual and corporate. We're working hard to improve our service, and please do get in touch if you have any thoughts on that. And then finally, on fundraising, we are in the very capable hands of our development director, Paul Summerfield, who has built a philanthropic base at RUSI for the first time in our 189-year history. And under his leadership, we've raised half the total needed, as Lord Hague mentioned, but we're still working very hard to raise the second half. And I too would like to thank not only Lord Hague and Sir John Scarlett and Sir Mick Davis, our campaign chair, for all the hard work they've done to help us get there. But I'd also like to thank the Star International Foundation, the Law Family Charitable Foundation, the Garfield Weston Foundation, Sir Mick Davis, the Excel Arches Foundation, Mr. Lawrence Geller, the Hinsey Family Charitable Foundation, Google, and many others for significant pledges and donations to get us where we are today. So I would say overall, repeating what Lord Hague said, our growth and success so far, which we have been managing as carefully as we can, it can be attributed to an extremely strong group of professionals really at all levels of the Institute, starting with the leadership team that includes Malcolm, Deborah, and Jonathan, but of course also the very capable management team and all other RUSI staff. It also, of course, our success goes to our governing bodies, our chair, our vice chair, our trustees, and our advisory board. And just before I end, I just want to thank two people. I know Lord Hague thanked Sir Roger, but I also want to thank Sir Roger Bone, who is stepping down at this meeting for all of the work that he's done for us and his wisdom and all sorts of support. So we're really grateful for everything you've done. And then of course, it's, as Lord Hague said, it's his last AGM as chair, and he's finishing his tenure today. And I want to take this opportunity to thank him for everything he's done for us during his 5-year tenure. I think he has made significant contributions pretty much in every aspect of our success at RUSI. So many thanks. It's been an enormous pleasure working with you, Lord Hague, and we're really grateful for everything you've done. And at the same time, we're all looking forward to working with your successor, Sir David Liddington. Thank you, Chair. That completes my report.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Karen, for those remarks and indeed for the whole report. And so now we'll move on to the financial report, where we turn to Deborah.
Hello, thank you, Chair. First of all, the Institute has had another very good year financially, with total income up by 3.1 million on the previous 12 months to 13 million. The principal source of funding is again research activity, which accounts for 77% of total gross income, or just over this year, £10 million for the year. Total research income is also up 30% year on year, continuing the strong upward trend in the Institute's research income, which has continued over several years now. In addition, the Institute received donations, grants and gifts of 1.2 million this year, and it was also a good year for membership subscriptions, particularly corporate memberships. Costs remained under tight control, and charitable expenditure has stayed at around 95% of total expenditure. Total expenditure rose from 8.1 million to 9.8 million in the year. During the year, staff numbers increased from an average of 75 staff last year to an average of 86 staff this year. And right at the end of the financial year, RUSI moved out of its offices at 9 Whitehall into new and bigger leasehold offices in 123 Pall Mall. The Institute has net income for the year of 3.2 million, up from 1.8 million in the previous year, of which a surplus of 1 million is in unrestricted funds and a surplus of 2.2 million in restricted funds. The Institute's freehold property at 61 Whitehall was revalued by Savills at the 31st of March, resulting in a revaluation deficit of 650,000. Overall, the net movement in funds was 2.6 million this year compared to 3 million last year. Turning now to the balance sheet, as members will be aware, the Institute owns the freehold of its headquarters building at 61 Whitehall. The freehold of the building has been valued at 12.75 million, and this forms the major part of the tangible fixed assets of the Institute's balance sheet. The year-end balance sheet shows net current assets of 4.6 million, and total assets at year-end have increased from 11.7 million to 14.3 million. So the Institute's funds at the 31st of March are 14.3 million, of which 3 million is restricted and not available for the general purposes of the charity. 1.8 million of the restricted funds is cash that's already been raised for the redevelopment as a result of the ongoing fundraising campaign. Out of unrestricted funds, 8 million is invested in the RUSI building and its heritage assets, whilst the remainder, the general fund, stands at 3.3 million, and last year it was 2.3 million. 2 years ago, the trustees set a target for the Institute to aim to maintain, in normal circumstances, unrestricted free reserves sufficient to cover future operating expenditure for at least 6 months. As the Chair has already announced, the Institute has now almost reached that target. At the 31st of March 2020, the unrestricted reserves, i.e. the general fund of 3.3 million, represented approximately 5.5 months of budgeted expenditure for this year. Those members who have been members for a while now may recall that 5 years ago, the Institute's reserves were actually a negative figure. So we are very pleased to have made such progress over a relatively short period in building up a reserve, which is of course a buffer against whatever might come along. Getting close to achieving our target for RUSI reserves could not have come at a better time because these are very uncertain times. The COVID-19 crisis, which began at the end of this accounting period, including of course the lockdown, which began on the 23rd of March, has not significantly affected the Institute's results reported in these accounts. Since the start of lockdown, although the conference and events businesses have suffered during the period and we've had to close down our building at 61 Whitehall, we have successfully moved most of our events, including members' events, online, and we're excited about the wider reach that has been achieved in this new medium. In addition, the demand for RUSI's research work continues to be strong, and our researchers are able to deliver the same volume and quality of work while working remotely. However, the effects of the coronavirus pandemic are being felt across the UK economy and worldwide, and of course, the Institute will not be immune to the fallout from the inevitable serious and prolonged economic downturn. So far, RUSI has been able to adapt rapidly to new working arrangements thanks to the remarkable flexibility and talents of its staff in London, Brussels and Nairobi. The Institute not only continues to deliver on current projects, but also is well placed to take advantage of any new research opportunities that may arise because of this crisis. The Institute also benefits from a diverse range of funders with whom we remain in as far as possible close contact, and from a significant number of long-term, multi-year funding contracts. Over the past few weeks, and together with our auditors, we have carried out an assessment to confirm that in the light of the COVID-19 crisis, the Institute remains a going concern, and we and our auditors are satisfied that this is the case. Our pipeline of work remains strong, and at this stage, we don't anticipate any need to call on our reserves during the current financial year. Nonetheless, the Institute continues to be watchful and cautious regarding how this unprecedented set of circumstances will play out and how they may affect our activities in the coming months and years.